This is the Panasonic Lumix L10. Okay, it's not. It's a squishy toy shaped like a stick of butter, but that's just because I rented the L10 from lensrentals.com and I had to return it before I shot this part of the video. But every camera video has to start with "this is insert name of thing here." It's a law, I'm pretty sure. This B-roll actually is the Lumix L10, and it's a pretty damn good little camera. The L10 is a compact digital camera with a micro four thirds sensor and a fixed 24 to 75 full frame equivalent lens. The lens is variable aperture with a maximum of f1.7 at 24 millimeters and a maximum of f2.8 at 75 millimeters. On the back, you have a flippy screen, an EVF and an S&Q switch, a LUT button, autofocus button, and a D-pad style dial, along with the normal buttons like a menu button and Q menu, stuff like that. Up top, you get a PASM dial, a command dial, and a zoom rocker. On the lens, you get a manual aperture ring, a control ring, an AF-MF switch, and an aspect ratio switch that I'm going to be honest and tell you that I never even touched. I would like the full sensor's output at all times. I can crop later. Thank you very much. Now, I don't mean for this to be a comparison video to the S9 because that's kind of a stupid comparison because they're not really comparable cameras. They're totally different in almost every way, but they are almost exactly the same size. The reason I bring this up is because while the S9 and the L10 are nearly identical in size, the L10 feels way smaller. I think that's because it has a molded-in grip as opposed to being perfectly smooth like a Ken doll. Since the bodies are so similar in size, I'm selfishly hoping that some of the physical design features from the L10 trickle down to the next-gen S9. Please give me a grip on the next S9 Panasonic. It doesn't make the camera any bigger, and it allows you to hold it, like with your hand. Pretty cool. The software on the L10 will be very familiar to you if you have used any other recent Lumix cameras. It's pretty much identical to the software on my S9 and my S5 II. The L10 also uses the, in my opinion, very good Lumix Lab app. It also uses the same LUTs as the other Lumix cameras, which is very nice if you want to match photos or footage from your big camera to your small camera, without having to color grade or edit it. I kind of rented this camera at the worst possible time when I only had one single day off out of the 7 days that I had the camera, but I decided to lean into it and use it as a true everyday carry camera. I took it with me literally everywhere for a week and got some pretty good photos from it. I'm going to show you some of those photos, then I have a lot more feelings about who this camera is for and who should buy it. Oh, I've been really into the Mara LUT from Ross and his JPEG, so pretty much all of these are using that LUT except for the black and white ones. That is the built-in Leica monochrome profile, which is one of the best black and white profiles of all time. Do not at me. There is no need to discuss.
Strong, crazy bets on me. Back mid scroll, Armageddon arcane. Walking the wild, walking the wild. Don't know why. Cosplay cowgirls and numberless chats. Feeling just fine in our running hats. Walking the wild, walking the wild. I don't know why. I don't mind the hustle and the tussle. I don't mind the grind. I don't mind pretending we don't see these signs. The hustle and the tussle, I don't mind the grind. You and me dancing on the
So yeah, image quality out of this camera is pretty good, and the 24-75 equivalent lens is very versatile. Not exactly earth-shattering news, but it's nice that it works like it's supposed to. If you really pixel peep photos from this camera versus something like an S9 or S5 II, you can see that the larger sensor, higher resolution cameras give you more detail and more subject separation. But again, that's not really all that surprising, and probably not even relevant for what most people would use this camera for anyway. It's not like many people would be choosing between this and their S5 II, like you're going to pick this one based on the size, right? Same thing for low light performance. The L10 is totally fine indoors in lowish light, but it definitely wasn't as good as my full frame cameras. Shocking, I know. Unlike the S9, the L10 has a mechanical shutter and a hot shoe, so you can actually use a flash with it. Pretty novel. I slept on a Godox IT30 Pro and got some cool on-camera flash photos that my daughter says look vintage, which makes me feel 100,000 years old, as vintage in this case means the late 90s and early 2000s. While this is clearly not the kind of camera really meant to be a dedicated video shooter, it's still pretty competent at video. The lack of IBIS means it's unlikely to be like your vlogging rig, but the OIS and the lens makes it decent enough for B-roll or family vacation photos. At least if you have the camera on a tripod or something, or at least you're standing still and bracing yourself. If you try to handhold it, things get pretty wobbly. On the plus side, the E-stabilization works pretty well. It's still not anywhere as smooth as my S9 with IBIS, but it's presentable. One thing I should mention is that E-stabilization only works in MP4 formats and not in MOV formats, which I doubt many buyers of this camera will really care about that much. I feel like this is a dedicated MP4 Lite kind of camera. As an added bonus, if you do use this camera for B-roll, it's going to be trivial to match it to footage from another Lumix camera because it also shoots in Vlog and should grade pretty much identically. Or alternatively, you could use the same LUT on both cameras and just have them match straight out of the camera. The L10 has a macro mode, which allows you to get pretty damn close to stuff. It is a macro mode, and it works pretty well. I wouldn't buy this camera as a dedicated macro camera or anything, but it's always nice to have that option essentially for free. That is, if you don't buy this camera with macro photography in mind, you have the option to use it like when the opportunity arises. Like, it's there if you want it. If you're picking up on an emerging pattern here, it's because this little camera is pretty competent at most things. I also want to point out that Panasonic just generally got this one right. They needed a compact fixed lens camera on the market, and this is a well-executed example of one. It's small enough to carry around with you, it takes pleasing photos, it's easy to use, especially if you're already familiar with Lumix cameras, and it feels good, like solid and well built. Everything's going to be a trade-off, especially when you're making a compact camera, and I feel like Panasonic, by and large, made the right trade-offs. It's got a smaller sensor than the X100VI, but it also has a lens that covers a much wider range of focal lengths, and in my opinion, Lumix LUTs are better and more flexible than Fuji's film sims. Even compared to my S5 II with the Sigma 28-70 f2.8, the L10 covers a much wider range of focal lengths in a much smaller package. Obviously, the S5 II 28-70 setup has some benefits to it, but it still shows you just how much versatility you get in such a small package with the L10. Of course, all of us would like to have something the size of a Ricoh GR with a fully stacked full-frame sensor, EVF, 9-stop IBIS, and a constant aperture f1.4 16-200mm lens. But that's not going to happen for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is physics. I think the L10 makes the right choices for the most people in this camera's target demographic. This camera feels like it naturally wants to be either a second camera to your Lumix interchangeable lens camera, or kind of a gateway drug into the Lumix ecosystem. I think most people that already carry around something like an S9 will probably not want to sell it and buy this camera instead. But if you just have an S1 II or an S5 II and you want something easier to carry, or something you can take to places like concerts where interchangeable lens cameras are not allowed, it's a great choice. And if you already have some LUTs you like on your bigger Lumix cameras, or you've already turned your presets into a LUT, it'll seamlessly drop right into your workflow. Another cool thing is that it uses the same battery as the S9 and S5 II and S1 II and basically all of Panasonic's other modern cameras. So that's pretty nice, especially if you already have a collection of batteries. Also, if you're just getting into photography, this is a great choice. It's enough camera that you can grow into it, but it's also simple enough to kind of get out of your way and let you learn some basics of exposure, explore different LUTs and looks, and figure out which focal lengths you prefer. You don't have to worry about what lens you're going to put on it, or even what lens to buy with it, like you would if you're a beginner shopping for a mirrorless camera. It has enough manual controls that you can actually learn photography, but you can always switch over to the auto mode and throw on a fun LUT if you're getting discouraged or overwhelmed. For most casual photographers, this is perfect. It's capable of producing some pretty damn high quality image in a reasonably small package that requires basically nothing other than what is in the box to get started and keep you happy for quite a while. I think that's about it for the L10. In less than a week, I'm leaving for a road trip and I'm taking my S9 with my shiny new Lumix 40mm f2. So I'm super excited for that, actually shooting this video on the Lumix 40 f2. Anyway, I'll be back with that in a couple weeks. Later.